Today on the Homeboys podcast, we are talking with Daniel Jewell. He is a young man that is 27 years old and has gotten started in real estate and done it in a way that the Homeboys are completely on board with. We're hoping that this episode will speak to not only the new investor, but to the younger generation out there. Daniel drove a long way to be with us, and we are very grateful for him to be on this podcast. Stay tuned. You're kicking it with the Homeboys. Hey everybody, you're kicking it with the Homeboys and the Homeboys podcast. My name is Clint. We've got a very exciting and unique show today. We are talking with Daniel Jewell, and Daniel has been a listener of the podcast. He's followed us on some of our other social media platforms, and he's had some questions for us, and they've all been really good questions, and he's also had some good feedback for us. Maybe the Homeboys are just fear-mongering too much and not getting into the nuts and bolts of real estate investing. And he's kind of opened our eyes to that. And I'm very gracious and thankful that he has reached out to us. So we said, hey, man, why don't you come on the show? And he has agreed to come on. So we're going to be talking about getting started in real estate investing. Daniel is a little bit younger than both Scotty and I, so I think that he could really speak to the younger generations out there that are trying to get started, or really anyone that's trying to get started. We've got the opportunity to listen to his story a little bit off camera, and he's a really, really interesting young man, and we're just very, very glad that he's on the show. So, Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. We just got done talking off camera a little bit. I really appreciate you coming on, and we're wanting to really kind of open everyone's eyes to how someone could get started. And we kind of got into your story a little bit, and I really admire, how you got started. But first of all, let's just tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about Daniel.
Named Daniel Jewell. My family is originally from LA, although I was born in Virginia, Northern Virginia. I'm 27 years old. I'm one of six, number 5. I was homeschooled, and kind of growing up, parents didn't accept excuses.
I love that. We didn't talk about that off air. Yeah. My dad was the same way, so I love it.
Yeah, so wasn't really a good acceptable answer. It was, you gotta take forward, and you gotta take responsibility for a lot of things. And I think that translated to real estate very well, because there's always a way. It doesn't matter what, doesn't matter. Right. I don't care. There's always a way. It's just you haven't found it yet. So, when you are having a hard time, you just can be like, well, I got to talk to somebody, or I got to do something, and then I'll figure it out.
Right. Well, I think that's a really good quality. I mean, I have a hard time with people that are constantly making excuses, and me and Scotty talk about a Rocky quote, all the time that talks about, not pointing fingers and saying you're not where you need to be because of him or her or anybody.
Yeah, it's not productive.
Cowards do that, and that ain't you. So, we're big into that, and Scotty always, says, hey, just do it when it comes to real estate. So I think that psyche and that mentality will suit you very well now and going forward. But let's kind of dive into it. You're fully, getting immersed into real estate, and you've got your feet wet. Tell us a little bit about how you got started. We could start with your primary residence. I think that was part of your story. Let's start there, and then we can get into kind of some of your, investments and stuff later too.
Right. So, my little brother Devin showed me the Bigger Pockets podcast, and I listened to a lot of stuff. Like, back when I was in high school, I listened to my entire local library's audio section, like alphabetically. Yeah. So I really like audio stuff, and and I started listening to them. And the biggest thing that I took away from is just get started. And a lot of ways that you can do that is just to buy a primary residence, because there's only a fair amount of levers that you can pull when it comes to your finances. You know, you have outgoing, and some of that is your primary residence. So first step, buy a house. And I ended up, we kind of partnered on that one, and then it kind of phased out, but ended up buying this house, and there were no floors in it. And I mean, like, you could jump into the crawl space in some places, so it didn't qualify for traditional financing. So we ended up having to do a 203B loan, which is the little brother to the 203K loan, which is basically where you wrap the rehab costs into the purchase of the house.
Okay, I'm familiar with the 203K. What's the difference in the 203B?
B is 5,000 minus.
Okay.
K is plus.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to the other letters, but
yeah,
you know.
Now, the 203K used to be really, really popular about 15 years ago. You saw it a lot on HUD foreclosures and different things. You saw it a lot. But yeah, be honest, I don't really know much about the 203B.
Yeah, so it's basically the exact same thing for the 203K. The biggest hurdle that I found was finding a contractor that was willing to take oversight from the bank. That was really, really hard to do. So if you are going to try to find a house that you can add value to, find some contractors and build a relationship with them prior to just asking them for something.
Is that because of like the payment structure? They have to wait on the bank, and you have to go through all of that, right?
Yeah. Now, meet Kevin. He's a YouTuber. He outlines his experience because he also did this. It's kind of on some of his older videos, but the way he did it was he had a chunk of cash that's how he paid the contractor, and then he reimbursed himself via the bank. I don't know if that's the exact right way to do it, but that's the way he bridged that gap of the trust.
Right.
So build a relationship with the contractor first and then move forward. That was a big hurdle. That almost lost me the deal because of that.
So tell me, like, do you feel like by going through that kind of loan process, were you able to get in, you know, with equity at a good price? Or?
Yeah, so a lot of people, everybody complains about competition. There's always going to be competition. And let's get it back to the excuses. If there's competition, maybe that market is saturated. So go where there's less competition and add value there, because there's always going to be value to add somewhere.
Right.
But a lot of people, I guess maybe not now, but is to find a HUD-approved agent, and preferably an agent that is a real estate investor themselves. But I lucked out, and I kind of chose him. I was like, hey, we're going to work together, kind of.
Yeah.
And he found a HUD house that was foreclosed on. It was really rough, so and it was in the investor stage. So when a HUD house comes on the market, the first month, it's not accessible to investors. It's only owner occupants. All right. So it was well within that. I think it was on the market for like 200 days or something like that. And we made an offer at like it was advertised at 150, but we made an offer on like 120, and then they accepted it. So I was like, oh, maybe we should have offered less, because they
I tell you, the reason why I was smiling, believe it or not, HUD foreclosures was literally how I started in real estate. And kind of figuring out the system. Now it's changed over the years, but. Whenever I got started, homes on Monday afternoon would go from owner-occupant status to investor status. And then the foreclosures were very plentiful. Here in central Indiana, just in the two counties that I was really active in, there were, call it 150 homes that would go from owner-occupant to an investor status on Monday. So I'd be in front of the computer. I'd research them. That 100, 150 would go to 10, 11, 12 that I was interested in. Then I'd get on the road and I'd tour all these homes, and then I'd get back in front of my computer, and I had till midnight to put the bid in. Like I said, I know it's a lot different now, but back then, you talk about being scared to, or wishing that you'd win a little bit lower. Back then, it was an equation.
It was good
that HUD had, and I had figured out that if no one else outbids you on that first day that they went from owner occupant to investors, 88% of list price, their computer system would accept a bid at 88% of list price. Would not do 87. But 88 was the magic number, and that's literally what I did for three full years. So I know that HUD foreclosure game. Well, I shouldn't say that. I used to know it exceptionally well. I don't know it as
they
good
updated
now,
their terms recently, so.
But now there's a lot more competition. So
There's still less competition when it comes to HUD. So finding a HUD agent, somebody that knows the HUD shtick, it would be a good thing to weed out, because not all agents are created equal. So it's
no doubt.
Yeah.
Whenever back in 2003, 4, whenever I was starting in this, practically zero agents had any idea about investing, or especially HUD foreclosures. I had my license parked at a Century 21 office for a while, and I remember going to the sales manager and saying, "Hey, I'm wanting to buy HUD foreclosures. Can you help me out?"
Yeah, most of them
and
still were like,
he said, "I have no idea," and I had to seek that out. But anyhow, so you were able to get in and at a good price with some equity.
Right. Yeah, and just I don't want to forget this part. So before I was able to buy it, you need to be financially sound. Basically, you need to have a good credit score. If you can get to 700 plus, that's great, right? You need to have a minimum of like 3 or 4 credit cards to get to that point, and you need to have at least like 10 grand saved, right? Because not everybody just go buy a house, but not everybody has $10,000 or $14,000 just to dump on a like a 3.5% down payment and closing costs and all that other stuff. So get a good credit score, get at least 10,000 saved, and then you can move forward. But there's a lot of other options when it comes. They can wrap some of those into the loan sometimes, but in most cases, it's good just to have that cash because it'll give you some buffer.
Well, I'm really happy to hear you say that, because so much of what I see on social media is, if you put anything down, you're stupid.
No.
Don't leverage as much as you possibly can. If not, go get hard money at 14% if you have to. So what got you on the path of being able to enter that way? Did you learn on Bigger Pockets or something else? I listen to Bigger Pockets as well, so right. I believe in the Bigger Pockets podcast. But I see so many people your age that aren't thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get into real estate. I'm going to save at least $10,000 and do this."
That's good for your first.
Which I think it's awesome that you did. Kudos to you. That's what we preach. So how did you come across that equation?
I just looked at what needed to be done. What do I need to do this? Okay, that's what I need to do. So do that to get it. And I think you need to apply that same thought process to almost anything else in your life. If it's at work and you want them to do something and they want something in return, why don't you just give it to them?
Yeah.
You're making this emotional. Stop making it emotional. Just if you're willing to give them what they want and they give you what you want, who cares? Right. It doesn't matter. So just figure it out and move forward. And it's just a matter of just doing some basic research, just basic Googling. What do I need to do to buy a house? And in most cases, you can go to the loan officer, any loan officer, and just be like, "Hey, I'm trying to buy a house. What do I need to do?" And then they will tell you specifically, "Hey, your tax return needs to look like this. Your debt to income ratio needs to look like this." And then going forward, that's all you need to do. You just do it. Do what people tell you to do.
Great point with the loan officer. So would you recommend a younger real estate investor, a new real estate investor, maybe that would even be an action step, that to go to a loan officer sooner rather than later and see what you need to do?
Yeah, the first step for, I think, any real estate investor is to buy a primary residence. Flat out, don't care, don't pass go, buy your primary residence. That's it. Just do that. And once you're going through that process, and this is the easy way, you'll learn a crazy amount. And, they'll ask you what your shoe size is and, everything.
I know.
There's a lot.
Every document since birth.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So once you go through that process, you can start looking at other options, and it'll give you a better understanding. But the way I did it was I was also making, $27,000 a year. I wasn't making a crazy amount, but I bought a house, right? I did what I needed to do in order to get it. I saved up. I, mowed grass. Whatever.
Whatever you had to do, you did it.
Yeah, because I wanted something, so I paid what needed to be paid to get it. That's it. But once you get your primary residence, and for me, what I did, I was working out of college doing robotics, and my boss was gaslighting me a little bit, so I didn't really want to stay there regardless.
Yeah.
But the value of the W-2 wasn't that high because I wasn't making a crazy amount. I was only making $27,000 versus in some version of construction, you can make a lot of money. You can make 80, 90, sometimes $150,000,
right.
Being a framer in some cases. So I figured I would quit, and then I would bide my time being self-employed for 2 years. And the reason why I say 2 years is because when you're self-employed, that's how long you have to file tax returns in order for it to qualify for a new loan. Okay? So if you quit your job in robotics and you start doing construction, your income no longer counts.
Right.
Right? So if you're in a related field, it might, but it no longer does. So now you're at square one. You got to wait 2 years. And basically what I did was I was invoicing everybody for everything. I was trying to, boost my income as much as I can. And when I started filing taxes, I also tried, I decided not to take all the deductions that I possibly could. Because every deduction that I took lowered my personal finances or my quote unquote profit. So I would qualify for less. And I had a target. I got with an accountant. I was like, how much money do I need to make in order to refinance my house?
Let me just reiterate, you got with an accountant.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. That's smart.
Yeah. So I got with an accountant, and we basically figured out what my income and my financial profile needs to look like over the next 2 years in order to qualify for certain things. And my plan was to get a home equity line of credit on my primary residence and refinance my house, or refinance my house and then get a home equity line. And I refinanced last December. So
Which is a great time to refinance.
I know, really. Yeah. So my payment went from like $1,000 down to like $600, which was great.
Right.
And I didn't take any equity out because then it would be, I just didn't want to do that. And then I went to I shopped around a lot. So like I went and just got it, but this is me calling like 80, 90 different banks, credit unions, everybody knew who I was. And then I found somebody that was willing to work with me, and then I moved forward with the refinance. And then I did the same thing with a home equity line of credit. And what happened is they ended up giving me $100,000 in a line of credit. And that was me tailoring, that it comes specifically off of me tailoring my debt to income ratio.
Right.
Specifically. And that was like 2 or 3 years ago. That's me planning this out all this time, me making payments on my credit cards, me paying, attention to my income every single month, making sure that it's up to par so then I can qualify for this. And then once I got that, like 2 months ago, I started shopping for a house, and last month on the 27th, I closed on my first rental property. So
I think that it's important to kind of notate like everything that had transpired. You
jump forward 2 years.
Well, you did this. You started with your primary residence.
Yep.
$27,000 a year.
Yep.
You were making.
Yep. That's before tax, by the way.
Right. So you secured your primary residence at $27,000. you were working with
it's in Northern Virginia,
a realtor that specialized in foreclosures. You worked with many different lenders, talked to many different banks, talked to your accountant. All of these things. I think it's important to notate that and acknowledge that all of these steps that you took, didn't really cost you any money, but were setting you up for what you needed for the future. So you really created a great foundation of getting to know the accounting piece of it, getting to know the lending piece of it, getting to know, all of this. That is really, really a great foundation, to start with this. And then, you refinanced your house, did not pull any equity out. You took advantage of the low interest rates. You got the access to a HELOC. Then you started looking for an investment property. So great. Take us into your investment property then.
So with the same agent that helped me buy my primary residence, he is awesome. And he's just really great, and he kind of specializes in HUD properties. And I mean, the word cheap is does not have a very positive connotation, but I think that cheap properties make a lot of money. Everybody wants to buy a big, flashy house, but the return that you get on those are not very much. And
a lot of times bring about a lot more risk too.
Yeah, in some cases. And the property that I got, I bought it for $42,000, but it was tax assessed at $92,000. So I bought it very below, and I think that was on Trulia, and it was an auction. I, for the past month, I've been there pretty much full time, nonstop, fixing it myself. Actually, I'm not completely done. I didn't expect to get the return that I did, but I started advertising, and I started getting this just waves and waves and waves. I thought the market would have cooled down a little bit, but a lot of applicants. And it ended up
to rent the property.
Yeah, I was like, geez, because I work during that 2-year period. I work for other investors, and I get experience. And like a year ago, we posted a rental property, and we got like 40 applicants in like the first hour. It was insane.
Sheesh.
It was crazy. And I didn't think it would do the same, but the same thing. And I just, basically just everybody was, there are people that don't qualify, but just at that point, the best qualified candidate. And I played it placing a vet, a single woman that is a vet in the area, and she's moving, and then she makes like $100K a year, which is a lot for that area too.
Well, it's good no matter where you're at, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, for that area, I mean, 100K is a lot here in Indianapolis, also.
Yeah.
But I would think that that's a phenomenal applicant.
Yeah, and she also took initiative when it came to it. So we posted the ad on Facebook, and we're only advertising on Facebook at this time. But she found the email of my agent and emailed him, and then, but that wasn't posted, is what I'm saying. So she wanted something, and then she moved forward and she got it, she ended up getting the property. So if you want something, take the initiative and move forward with it. And I think that's really crucial. But
so is she in the property now?
No, I literally last night we signed the lease.
Night.
Yeah,
timing's everything, huh? Well, got you on the show at the right time. So cool. So so she's slated to move in beginning on the first of this next month.
That's when the lease is dated to take into effect.
So lease, all that stuff, you doing it all on your own?
Yeah, so I just each state has a basic lease, and that's what I'm using. I figured it, I mean,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, by the way. So it's not why I'm asking.
But I'm trying to say that everybody or landlords don't have a great reputation to begin with.
Which is fair and unfair all at the same time, but I get it, yeah.
So I think if you just and I think we're all just trying to live in the world. So I think if you just try to do right by people and you make the effort to do right by people, that will protect you from the majority of anything. I mean, if something bad happens and you try to do right by that person, then it doesn't I mean, yeah, the lease is good to have it. It's good to have that protection. But if you're trying to, like, you know, structure things in all these complicated ways and, you know, it doesn't, you're not paying it forward. That's not the right mindset. It's more along the lines of like, hey, provide a good home, provide good services, and then, you know, it'll come back. It's not.
Absolutely.
Really
so you're gonna self-manage the property, you know, for a while, which, you know, I totally recommend, you know, people in the beginning self-managing. I think that it's good to know the ins and outs, you know, of real estate. There's always a few hurdles that come along with management. Management is one of the, you know, the pieces that really bring everything, you know, full circle. So to know, you know, the management piece, I think, is very, very important. You know, once a person scales and, you know, goes from, you know, 1 to 5, you know, I do believe at looking at a property manager, but that brings a whole nother set of problems in because there's a mountain of bad property managers out there, you know, as well, you know, regrettably. But I think it's interesting for you to say that about the landlords, and I know that you've been watching our show and some of our content. We've talked about it a lot because some of the comments on there are just, you know, death to landlords and, you know, all this. Like, I mean, it's hard for me to fathom. But, you know, if anyone that hears your story and how you just explained it can say, you know, that all landlords are bad, which were some of these comments that we got. I mean, I think, you know, you're doing it the right way. You know, you're providing, you know, a nice home that you stand behind, that, you know, if something goes wrong, you're standing, you know, behind it, you know.
Well, don't make me out to be some, like, selfless person. I live 5 hours away. Okay, so, like, I am taking the opportunity to fix anything that I can.
Right.
All right, everything. So then if something does break, that's 100% on me.
Right.
You know, because, like, I replaced all the plumbing myself, and I had an electrician come out, and he inspected everything. Same thing with the HVAC system. It's got a new roof. Like, anything that could be broken, I replaced because I don't want to drive back.
No, I get it. You know? But you're also not cutting corners to, you know, put the least amount possible in a house that.
Well, yeah. So, like, that comes into play where if it works on, like, if the math works on a napkin, then you should be fine. And with this property, the napkin math worked. And basically, what my plan is, I'd like to, once I get done with everything, I'm going to take my rehab costs and my purchase price and everything else. I'm going to try to go to a bank, and I'm going to try to get to refinance it and get all my money back. But the reason why I said that it's tax assessed at $92,000 is because most banks won't lend on anything less than around $100,000. Now, that there are exceptions to that, but I just haven't found them yet.
Right, sure.
So, being that I bought it at $42,000, and I'm probably in it for about $10,000 right now in materials. That's not including my time. If I included it'd be much higher.
Understood.
But I'm doing it all myself. I mean, and these things are not complicated, guys. All right, like, seriously. Like, people think that things are complicated, and it's not rocket science. I mean, there are nuances, but if you just try, you'll be ahead of the game. So, replacing a sink, come on, like, a couple screws, get some Teflon tape, make sure it doesn't leak. If it leaks, take it apart, put it back together, and then, you know, just do it. Watch some YouTube.
I'm smiling because you know,
just do it.
Our stories aren't that different. You know, I had a full-time day job in business-to-business sales, and whenever I would be done, I would go home, put my painting clothes on, and
I hate painting.
And, you know, painting's rough. That was the first thing that went for me. You know, in most of the homes I was investing in at the time, that was the biggest piece of it, was the painting, and you know, it drove me nuts. But you know, that was the first thing I started to sub out, you know, pretty quickly. But you know, I got started, you know, working on all of my homes, you know, myself. I was kind of absent from the world for a couple of years because I was constantly,
that's what I'm doing,
you know, working, you know. But I think that, you know, our stories are exceptionally similar to how I got started and how you're on your upward trajectory now in real estate. So what is your next step? You've secured a tenant now. They're getting ready to move into your first. Are you setting back? You're securing financing.
Trying to secure financing. So once I get all my paperwork together, which is basically okay. Take a step back. So a lot of banks require a seasoning period, that's basically a proof of concept for that particular rental property. They want to see that it's performing for like 6 months or a year or something like that. And I don't want to do that. All right. I've done the math a lot, and my tactic is I'm going to pay for the taxes for the next year, or if they'll let me pay multiple years, I'm going to do it because I'm going to keep it. And then I'm also going to do that with the insurance and everything else. And I have the tenant paying for a year-long lease, so we're doing that. And hopefully I'll go to the bank and get a cash-out refinance. And I'm not going to I don't intend to pull out any equity because my purchase price was so low, right? So if they are only willing to loan $100,000, I'm only in it for $50,000. I kind of have to take the $50,000. Now, my plan for that extra cash, that is tax-free, by the way, I'm going to set aside a good chunk of it for reserves. All right. So even if the market crashed, I'll have like a year's worth of reserves or plus. Hopefully I won't, be vacant for an entire year.
No, I want to,
but
that is something that's exceptionally important is, you said, hold it back as reserves. I think a lot of times where people get in trouble, is it's not used for reserves. It's used for a Vegas trip. It's used for a new vehicle. Person has to be. We preach conservative here. Everything you've done so far in your real estate career is conservative, and I applaud you. I applaud you for that. What makes I'm surprised at your mentality because when watching social media, I feel like the younger generation of real estate investors thinks so differently. Well,
I was homeschooled, so that may have something to do with it. I wasn't beaten down by the by the public school system. But it's just like I wasn't allowed excuses with things, and you need to take care of business. And I realize that not everybody has my tenacity, maybe. It's just you have a goal. Do what you need to do to get to the goal. Study the goal, do the goal. And like during those 2 years of waiting, I listened to all of the Bigger Pockets podcast. I was reading the forums. I was doing research. Like any book that you bring up, I've read. I'm on my third lap of the podcast. And I'm not necessarily listening to it for a lot of information. A lot of it's kind of repetitive. But I'm picking up nuggets here and there that I didn't realize or even understand before. So I'm still learning, even though I'm listening to it a few times, I'm listening to it again, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense because I have context in other areas. And I'm just building on my knowledge over and over and over again. Now, I don't listen to books that much. I like to read a lot of fiction.
Like what? Give me an example.
Everybody likes Harry Potter.
Cool, man. Yeah.
I like the young adult stuff. The Bartimaeus trilogy. I liked Lightbringer. Brent Weeks as an author. I really like him. If you like, what's his name? The Dresden Files.
Okay, I've heard of it.
That's a good series. The ending was a little bit of a downer.
You Star Wars fan? A lot of times I see Harry Potter fans being Star Wars fans too.
Yeah, I'm not too big on Star Wars. It's not too big on Marvel.
That's the only manly thing. I'm in a house full of estrogen, 2 girls and a wife, and I've got my 6-year-old is into Star Wars, so like that's like the only like kind of masculine thing I have going on is Star Wars. So I joke about that, but we joked about it before we came on air. You said you're very well read, and I talked about how poorly read I was. It's actually not entirely true. I spent the first 30 8 years of my life never reading a book.
I listened to all of this, by the way.
Listen, I think that's okay too. I still listen to some, but my last 6 years of my life, I've read and listened, to a lot of books, both fiction and nonfiction, faith-based, a lot of real estate related books. But anyhow, I mean, I think that's good. We always have to be learning.
Yeah, and I think there's also, you got to be really self-aware of your learning, and your you don't want to get burnt out with things. Yeah. And while I did concentrate specifically on real estate, and I've read all the real estate books, or at least all the popular ones, anyways. I took breaks. Mm-hmm. All right, so if after I read like 3 or 4 real estate books, okay, let's stop and let's eat something, not real estate related. And, you do that with anything, just mix it up a little bit.
I agree.
Keep the momentum up. So when people say, do you have a book recommendation? Not really.
Right.
Just have a consistent effort in the knowledge consuming area, and then do whatever makes you happy at that time. But just keep moving in that direction.
Well,
that's all you got to do.
Variety is the spice of life. So we're getting towards the end of our show. I want to spend the last 5 to 10 minutes on a few questions that I've thought of just during this podcast. Yeah. But so what are you talked about being goal oriented. Yeah. You're 27 years old. Mm-hmm. I think 40 is a very it's a number that hits home to a lot of people. I know I sure hated it whenever I turned 40. But so say by the time you're 40, what would the picture be like, for Daniel as far as real estate and real estate investing? What's your vision of it?
I would like to fund and build my own apartment complex, maybe 200 or 300 units, mm-hmm. maybe. I mean, I don't know if that's a practical thing.
Totally.
But what I envision for myself going forward is to buy a lot of rental properties, use that to catapult me into I guess the next level. I'll stop investing for cash flow, and I'll start investing for more value and stable markets, so where then I can potentially leverage against them. I don't want to say that word around you guys.
You know how I am about leverage.
But I'd like to.
And let me say, I'm not totally against leverage. I'm against leveraging your life to the
right.
knife's edge, as Scotty always says, the knife's edge, But, I don't want everyone to think that, oh, my gosh, I've done all of everything that I've ever done without borrowing a penny. Not true.
Well, yeah, and I don't think that I don't want to borrow everything, mm-hmm. but what I'd like to do is I'd just cash out those smaller rental properties and buy something in like Fairfax, where mm-hmm. like Washington, D.C. is not going out of business anytime soon. Right. So if you buy something close to there, mm-hmm. the value is probably going to be relatively stable. Your mm-hmm. cash flow is going to be non-existent, but the value will be there, and you can take that stable product to a bank and be like, hey, I've got all these properties in this area. I want to build this other thing. Let's work mm-hmm. with it. They might finance 50% while I have 50% or whatever. It doesn't matter. But that's what I'd like to do. I'd start building, because I think for the next about 10 years, our I guess that's not 40, but mm-hmm. for the next 10 years, I think that it's all about units.
That's close enough.
Yeah, well, whatever.
That's close enough. Trust me, 37 turns into 40 real fast, yeah. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. But I think we need to build more units.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's happening there, but I also am aware of manufactured housing. I'd like to start building some more manufacturing. That's different than modular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. Yeah. It's a good conversation. Something I'm not an expert in, but let me also, I want to pivot just a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm really impressed with your story. I believe in everything that you're doing. I believe you're doing it right. There's a lot of people that get into real estate that I believe are doing it the wrong way. And I would tell you that if I thought that you were.
I so.
So, you are a big piece of the audience that the Homeboys, want to reach to, because we believe that there's financial literacy is dying in this country. We believe that there's a lot of bad real estate advice, and sometimes the homeboys get into be just doing the, ooh, beware, we're fear mongers and, Chicken Littles and the sky is falling. So, I'm 17 years older than you are, a different generation.
Yeah.
What can the homeboys be doing to speak to you and what you believe your generation needs to hear more, instead of just being the fear mongers that we are?
I think provide an avenue of everybody. They want a book. They want a game plan. They want a simple way, like, if you do this, you will get that. And I think that my generation also needs to understand that this isn't easy. All right, I have applied a tremendous amount of focus and drive towards this specific goal. So I made it happen. I made it do that. I did what needed to happen to do it. But I think what the homeboys can bring to the table is to just say, like, the ways of doing it. So when you say, hey, don't do this, well, if you want to get to the same area, you can do this other thing. All right, this is the safer way to do it. This is the right way to do it. But versus just saying no. I mean, your kids are a little bit younger, but when I was, younger.
Especially younger for someone in their mid-40s, but yeah.
No was not an acceptable answer to me.
Right.
No is not an acceptable answer. So when somebody says, don't do that, I stop listening to you. So then I go and I figure out a way to do it. And if somebody says, hey, buy a Bentley, you leverage your 401k. I mean, not that I have a 401k, but
understood.
If they give an avenue, if they give a path, I'm going to take that path. So if you want to have a positive influence on them, give them the right path.
Okay.
Bentleys aren't the right path. That's not
right.
That's not happening.
Well, Scotty's on vacation right now. He is an exceptionally angry old man. So like whenever he gets back in town, I'm gonna set him down and say, hey man, we got to start smiling more. You
can be negative. It's fine. It's just
It's funny. Is like Scotty and I are I think our producer behind the camera here would acknowledge we're really fun-loving, happy, non-pessimistic guys in life.
You gotta have an outlet for it.
But what happens is we believe that there's so much bad advice, on TikTok and Facebook and whatever social media platform there is. We get a little hot under the collar, and sometimes that's what our show has been. So like having you on, I've learned, and I appreciate you reaching out to us through social media and, coming on. We appreciate you watching us but this has been a learning experience for us because we aren't, it's weird. I think you get into your mid-30s and, mid-40s and it takes a while to realize that you're not young anymore and that there's a generation behind you, that the way of thinking is different. So, the homeboys are dedicated to financial literacy, for real estate investors primarily, but financial literacy in general. We are going to take your recommendations. You will be seeing some different content, some different paths forward. But I believe in everything that you're doing. I applaud you.
Thank you.
If you stay the course doing what you are doing, I have zero doubt that you're going to look back in 10 years, which 10 years goes by exceptionally fast, and you will be, benefiting from the fruits of your labor because
you need to say that again because my parents are doubters around here. So
you know what? I think that's because your parents love you, and parents are always quick to doubt because they don't want to see their kid fall on their face. Because my dad was the same way. God rest his soul, and I miss him every day. But there's so many times that he told me not to do things, and I look back and I'm like, man, I should have did exactly what he told me not to do.
I've had some of those realizations,
and I love my dad more than anything, and he was a wonderful human being. But hey, Daniel's mom and dad, sometimes you're just wrong, and get on board with what he's doing and back off, okay? So,
or get on board.
That's right. But I think what you're doing is great, and if you keep this approach slow and steady and educating yourself along the way, like you've talked to all these other professionals and relied on these professionals, you are going to succeed, my friend. So I commend you. So thanks for coming on. I want to plug real quick. You do have some social media out there if you want to plug it. Jewels.
Real estate is my Instagram, and then
Okay.
I think my TikTok. You can go back and look through the comments, but my TikTok is at Daniel Jewell 53. I've got some stuff that's more current. There's impulse stuff, but I outline specifics on like jobs and such on my Instagram. If you want to read, you can go do that. Don't knock my spelling because whatever.
Oh, I can't spell for anything, dude. You're all good.
Yeah, but my Instagram is let me pull it up here for a second. Make sure I give you the right stuff. It's Jewell JEWELLS.realestate. And that's my Instagram.
So we want to plug him out there because Daniel is part of the Homeboys family, whether he likes it or not, and there's no way of getting out. So, hey, keep listening. Invest like him. Go conservative. Learn along the way. It doesn't have to be that difficult. Till next time, happy investing.